Hi, I am so sorry. It's been, I think, a month since I've been here, and I was supposed to do this twice a week. I am going to go back to that. I am so sorry, but I've been really swamped. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm working with the lighting here. Yeah, here we go. I've been really swamped, and then I got sick, and I didn't want you guys to see how bad I looked. Um, and so here we are, but we're going to be back on regular scheduled programming. I think, I know I'm going to be traveling a little bit. I've been traveling quite a bit, by the way. I've been to, um, I've been in Oakland, San Francisco a few times. I've been traveling to, Redlands. I went up to San Luis Obispo. That was actually really pretty. I did, uh, I've been traveling to, Louisiana, Houston, and now I'm going in another couple of weeks. I'm going to, where am I going? Um, gosh, Washington and Sacramento. So, and then Irvine. And I think I'm done traveling for at least for a couple of months. But I actually, well, I think I may have to travel again in May or early June to Indiana. So I also been, I think I also went to Chicago. So like I said, I've been traveling quite a bit. Yeah, I did go to Chicago. So I've been traveling quite a bit, and so my apologies. I am so sorry. Hmm. But I do have some positive news. Positive news. I was asked for the National Conference of Black Political Scientists. I'm in the running. So, and I was asked to sit on the vice presidential plenary. So that was really cool. So that's coming down the pike. So that's super exciting. And I would be the first community college professor. So that'd be cool. Second, I turned my first book in. And this is actually kind of cool because my dissertation is low-key popular. And I mean, it may not sound like a lot for those of you who aren't familiar with PhD, dissertations and stuff like that. But your dissertation is kind of like a smaller book, and I have it back there somewhere. I have it back there, down there. And I I literally get about 30 people since I published it. I get about 30 people who download my dissertation a month, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but in the world of dissertation land, that's kind of popular. And so, on average, 30 people. I have not gotten below 20 people. So it's between 20 and 30 people a month. And so I've been asked to kind of turn this into a book, and I've mentioned this before. I have been very slow in doing it. My friend died, Dr. Boris Ricks, and he really put a fire under me to turn it to do it, last year when we were talking. And so I was like, okay, well, whatever. I was really, I was kind of moseying the thought around, and then I really got to work, and then on it. I actually got turned down by a publisher, so I was really heartbroken. And then I got asked by a larger publisher, a much more renowned publisher. So that's where I'm at with it. So I turned it in for the first time. And so now I'm working on my second book. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Um, oh, sorry about that. But today I'm going to give a brief little update on, I'm going to give a brief little update on what is Department of Education. So Department of Education, and I think we have to go back to the Truman Report. So the Truman Report, I'm sorry, I don't have my headphones over here. Um, the Truman Report is about, came about where um, after World War II, uh, President Truman brought a number of people from diverse backgrounds, including Black people, to come and talk about like the state of education in the United States. And in his mindset, he's like, look, having a more educated populace is a necessity for national security. It's a national security risk if we don't have more educated people. And so it's a two-volume thing. You can read it, you can download it now. You can probably buy it in print, but it could be probably expensive. I'm not sure. I mean, I do have a printed copy, but they, you could look it up. And actually, you know what I could do is I can, so that you can see what it looks like. Um, okay. Here's what it looks like so that you can make sure that you're not getting the wrong thing. So here's what it looks like. I can go back so that you can, when you type it up, if you go on, this is what it should look like. You can also look at the Truman Commission and its impact on federal higher education. Well, that's an essay, so don't go there. But this Internet Archive one, this is what you want. Higher education for American democracy. That's what you want. Anyway, so part of, if you read through it, you'll see that they make a strong argument that the federal government, one of the recommendations is that state schools shouldn't necessarily just be free, that that dollars should follow the student and not dollars following the institution, which historically that's how it was funded. Federal money plus state money would go to the institution, and students don't pay to go to their state school unless there's like fees that they have to pay. But tuition is free. So, unless you're an out-of-state student, then you pay tuition. State of California, it is illegal, actually. You do not charge tuition to in-state students. You're charging fees. And there's a cap on how much the fee will increase. Now, tuition can increase as much as you want, but it wouldn't be to a California student. It would only be to an out-of-state student or international student. But California, okay, but so fast forward, this is Truman. So one of the few things that did change is that money was directed towards the student. It wasn't until 1980 that the Department of Education was founded. And this makes a lot of sense because President Carter was a huge proponent of public education. In fact, he's one of the only few presidents in modern era that put his kid in public school. Fast, fast, fascinating fact is that my mother taught her, was one of her teachers. Go figure. When they lived in Washington, D.C., when he was president. So I just want to put that into perspective. So the Department of Education The misconception of what the Department of Education is that they think that a lot of people view the Department of Education as being the thing that governs all education, and that is not what it does. Public school, first grade through 12th grade, is regulated by your school boards. School boards are independent. They are not Republican, they're not Democrat, they are school boards. School boards are elected. They get to govern all of the policies of what they want to teach at that school. They get to govern, there's 1 year, and I'm sure I have the research of it. A there's so many school boards. There are some school boards that still exist and they don't even have a school across the country. Like school boards, the number of school boards across the country is insane. And states do cities and states and counties do not, or parishes do not regulate the school board. However, they do regulate school funding. Now, school funding used to be attached to property taxes in that area. There was a court case that unraveled all of that. So it's not about the property taxes in that area. It is all property taxes that goes to the state, and then the state will regulate so that every school is going to get the same amount based on the number of students who attend. So we pay per student and they get an allocated amount. This is why if you have charter schools get paid per student. And so if you have a lot of charter schools, it pulls away from your local public school system because charter schools are still public school. They're public private spaces to where the charter school gets to narrow the number of students that they have. They can have a special population that they want to cover. They can have a cap on how many students they have in there. They can do a lottery system. They can do an application. They can be selective. Public schools have to accept everybody. Part of the problem with some of these charter schools is that they tend to accept people who tend to not have like disabilities. So there's been some discrimination conversations in these charter school spaces. But and charter schools have a lot of failures, and the rise of charter schools really came under George Bush. Um, and one of the cool things about what happened with Hurricane Katrina is that Hurricane Katrina became a hotspot of what can we do if we reimagine what schooling should look like. And so what really became is we wanted to have a lot of more private type charter schools in this space, and that became um it was like the disaster yielded a lot of opportunity. And what they discovered is that at the end of the day, a good public school is better than a charter school system by far, because it became more of a segregated space afterwards. But anyway, um, okay. So now, what does the Department of Education, cover? So let's go back. This is not what I wanted. Okay, so the Department of Education's responsibilities, and that's what I want to really spend some time on um, covering, because a lot of people have a horrible misconception. And here we go. Maybe I'll just go ahead and kind of deal with what does the Department of the federal role in education, right? So what really the federal government does is they do provide grants. So they provide certain different grants when it comes to their special programs. So like they provide grants when it comes to your food. So if it's low income, if you are getting, food subsidies. So if you were on low income and getting a food subsidy, that's what comes from the federal government will pay for that particular grant program. During the Obama years, they helped subsidize the breakfast program, but school districts had to buy in. Some school districts did not buy into that. So therefore, some school districts did not offer breakfast in the morning to talk about food because they didn't want to do it. And so there's that, the healthy lunch program. So they can kind of decide, okay, if you participate in healthy lunch, if you gave more exercise, then you get this particular types of funding. Um, so those were, some of the regulatory things. If they can also, the states govern what is teacher readiness and teacher competencies. So, what can make a teacher be qualified? That's a state thing. The federal government what they decided to do with the program for No Child Left Behind is they can grant a higher ranking, a higher achievement to the school and to the teacher based on if they reach a higher level of qualifications. And then if that was the case, the school gets money. In some cases, too, the teacher gets money. But these are buy-in programs because they can't force, because of the 10th Amendment, they can't force school districts to do anything except, of course, if it comes to discrimination policies. So if you're discriminating against one race, gender, religion, um, and here we go, ADA. So your disabilities, when ADA passed under George Bush, ADA allows your disability group to be able to have equal access, and in this case, because we're talking about education, equal access to educational opportunities. It does more than that, but the Department of Education provides additional funding to schools across the country to make sure that you are in ADA compliance, such as your bathrooms. You need to make sure that you have bathrooms on your campus that's accommodating to all people. And I mean, it's hard to imagine. Like, it wasn't until the 1990s that was mandated. There was this one young lady who would talk about, because she was in a wheelchair, that she literally would have to go to the bathroom her entire school life. She would literally have to go to the bathroom outside. That's crazy, right? Anyway, so you have um or if you need special teaching, right? If you need special teachers that can help you, if you need special programs that can help you, if you can need special anything that could actually help you, then that is if you need a bus to be able to take you to a location. So then that would be able to take you to and from school. Like, all of that is covered under the Department of Education. Okay. If you need testing issues. Now, what really then comes in is if Department of Education provides grants for school and it doesn't really regulate your first through 12 school across the country, then what does it really do? It does higher education. Most of you who are watching this video has probably come into contact with the Department of Education in one way, FAFSA. They're the ones that certify, they're the ones that look at how much money are you qualified for when you want to go to college. Your college money follows you, the student, to go wherever you want to go. So this also means that they also regulate the school. So your federal money that you have going to wherever school you want to go to, that school also has to be certified to receive said funds. And they have regulation. Now, Department of Education can then say, hey, you school, you're not following these certain regulatory ideas. And so in cases like Columbia University, they look at this and say, hey, you are discriminating against Jews, you're doing this, then this. You need to do fill it. You need to hire these different types of people. You need to cut this out of your particular program. You need to do this. And if you decide not to, then we are withdrawing off. We are not going to be able to certify federal dollars to go to your school. Now, what's fascinating is as I'm talking to different faculty across the country, they think that this is kind of ridiculous, right? And I understand that they think this is ridiculous because it is targeting and it is not, we haven't seen this level of targeting since Richard Nixon. But on the other hand, as an institution, I cannot, I cannot fathom keeping a faculty member employed, okay, for whatever reason, for the sake of losing all my ability to certify loans or for ability to certify grants. It's not worth it. And I know that I've been listening to the chatter, and I know that people like to also think that these institutions have a lot of money. Okay, they do have a lot of money, but I'm gonna tell you what, it costs a lot of money. You have a water bill, you have the groundskeeper. You have to think about all of every single thing on your college campus costs money. You don't have to pay as much property taxes, but you do have to pay property taxes. And in fact, if you think that this is mind-boggling, every single university in the country, even private, has to publish their financial report. So you can absolutely look up their financial report and see how much money comes in, how much money goes out. And I'm gonna let you know, even if tuition, which at University of Chicago is the highest tuition in the country, it's $100,000, even that does not cover the cost of University of Chicago. So if we want to say universities do it on your own, figure out the donations, or I've even heard people say, well, then colleges should be free. Fine. It may be free to the student, but it is not free. Somebody has to pay. And if you're like, well, faculty makes a lot of money, okay, fine. If we want to go with faculty makes too much, I actually don't agree with this, obviously. But faculty is one of the cost when it comes to universities, for sure. But you still have the buildings, you still have the maintenance. And then students want stuff. They like the notion of having good food on their campus. They like having the latest technology. They like having, they like having all these amenities. They like having, like ASU, they have a rock climbing thing. Why do you need that? Cal State Fullerton, they have a bowling alley. Why do you need that? But we also know historically that if you don't have activities on campus for students, they absolutely will run amok. So you definitely want to have activities on campuses. So with all that, there has to be a fine balance on activities versus like the cost. Like, I mean, college is expensive. And I think that people are forgetting the concept. And we're not even dealing with research. Like the biggest expense, people talk about sports being expensive. I'm gonna tell you what the biggest expense is. Science. Science. Do you want to get rid of your science programs? And then if you're like, well, wait a second, you think about all the things that science is being held up with. Now, universities, they don't just get money from the Department of Education with your FAFSA money. They get money from the Department of the military, like the Department of Defense. They're number one contractors. I know we always talk about all the private contractors for sure, but the number one contractors, higher education. Then we have NIH grants, all of the grants for the study humanities. And then you have research grants when it comes to medical research. So the Department of Health and Human Services have grants. Um, so it covers quite a bit. And we also have the conversation when you have FAFSA, your student loans, your Pell Grants. All of that comes under the Department of Education. So it's a quandary, and they are the ones that we have the greatest effect. So what happens when you now have a president who says that we need to, the executive order says that we need, and we can go to the executive order. Executive order to end Department of Education. Let's go. And the cool piece about this is that he had people, the people who were, he had children in desks sitting behind him when he signed this. And what this says is that it's supposed to provide educational opportunities for every child. They said taxpayers spent 200 billion on schools during COVID-19. Okay, now COVID-19 was a special event. We absolutely did spend more money because school districts all of a sudden had to figure out a way to provide education to people who are sitting at the house. Not everyone has a computer. Not everyone has a tablet. Not everyone has the internet. So those kind of things. And then it says so that was what the $200 billion was for. On top, they spent $60 billion on federal school funding. Yeah, buildings, um, accessibility issues. So their argument is that this is they're spending too much. And I'm gonna tell you that this sounds like a lot of money, but it really isn't a lot of money when you look at the total sum of the budget. The Department of Education is one of the lowest amongst how much people are spending on a federal level. Now, how much do we spend on across the state of California? We spend about 54% of our budget goes to education. Anyway, this is where it gets kind of this is where it gets kind of comical. While the Department of Education does not educate anyone, it maintains a public relations office that includes 80 staffers at the cost of $10 million per year. My God, Department of Education is not an agency that does anything with education, anyone. It deals with the regulatory agency that provides a lot of funding for students. And so the public relations is dealing with all of the fascinating programs. It also deals with trying to get word out about how to apply for FAFSA. How do you certify your student loans? How do you get Pell Grants? I mean, it's and $10 million when you have a $3 trillion budget is nothing. It really isn't. And so now we're pulling, and this is where it gets really sad, is because when they're talking about this, this has absolutely nothing to do with Department of Education. This is a state issue, right? So they're looking at the progress, and that's another thing the Department of Education does. It provides all of the statistics. It houses all that research of how we find out about what's going on in every state. That's what it does. It houses research. It gives us an understanding of how many people are graduating from high school, what's going on with women, what's going on with men, what's going on with people from different corners of the world. I'm not sure why we have Wells Fargo. This conversation about Wells Fargo. This means the federal student aid is roughly the size of the nation's largest bank, Wells Fargo. I'm not sure how Wells Fargo got into this, but when they say the Department of Education manages student loan debt portfolio of more than $1.6 trillion. Okay, that means they're trying to get their money back. They also are the ones who informs the agency. This is because of President Obama. It used to be that once you get your student loan, you go to the bank. Once the Department of Education certifies your student loan, they hand it off to the bank, and then the bank will come after you for the rest of your life, right? But now what happens is that the Department of Education certifies your loan, and the Department of Education um, doesn't give it to the bank. It informs the agency that's going to actually help pay. It saved this country trillions of dollars, right? In fees and etc. And I'm sorry, should have done this before my kids got home. Okay, so it saves, but now that the Department of Education is not, um, they what they want to do is they said they want to return it to bank, wants to return everything back to the bank. The problem with this is that it's going to cost us more money because what happens is you used to sign off and say, hey, I want Wells Fargo, since they use Wells Fargo, to be the person who certifies my loan. Okay, great. So the Department of Education says, okay, so we're going to approve you for $10,000. This bank, Wells Fargo, is going to be okay with giving you the $10,000. And then what they do is they give you an origination fee. Origination fee is about $600 to $800. So I actually then borrow 10,800, and the federal government pays that origination fee, and I also pay the origination fee. And then I graduate from college. I had all this interest accruing, and then I get to the part where I'm going to have to pay it back. And then once I skip 3 or 4 payments, then the federal government comes along and says, you know what, my bad, she couldn't afford it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay you everything that she owes. She probably now owes about $14,000 now. We're going to pay you. But then that also means that I'm still on the hook because the President Clinton, who says that I actually have to pay, I can't discharge any of my student loans. So I have to pay it until, because I can't go bankrupt on it. So you can still come after me and you can force me to go after to pay it back. So even though they've already received their money, I still have until the rest of my life to pay this back. So they get sometimes more than twice of what I actually paid. Right. There is no discharge of a student loan. So they're getting paid over twice. So President Obama cut that out, but it seems like President Trump wants to bring that back. And of course, this is great for the banks because they actually make a great load more money because they're getting double in some cases of what they've already, what they've loaned out. Um, and then what they're talking about is they want to give all authority back to the states. They already have the authority. So this is kind of mute. Um, but what they want to do is that they want to close any program that deals with diversity, equity, and inclusion now, or anything that deals with gender ideology. This is going to be your Title IX. So this is going to be a fascinating conversation because I don't know what happens to Title IX. Title IX got passed under Richard Nixon, but it really became um, influenced under President Ford. So Title IX means that all girls sports, for every guy sport, there has to be a girl sport, and it has to be equally funded. And um, you can't have more boy sports than girl sports. So this is where it became really a big deal. And we are now beginning to this, and it also under the last president, Trump's term, he disbanded this aspect, but most schools are still doing it, at least in California, is that it mandated, President Obama mandated that all schools must reveal their crime report. And schools were pushing back on this because they're like, wait a second, wait a second. Um, some of these schools aren't safe. And I'm gonna tell you what, many schools aren't safe. And and so schools did not want to release their crime reports at all. At all. Like today, I got notified that USC, South Carolina, uh, girl got hit. I mean, I don't know if it was a girl, but a student was hit by a car and died. So, but that may be, some, I mean, that's tragic for sure. But what people don't want to know is how many kids are getting raped on campus. Because, I mean, would you send your kid to a school that you know that so many of your students are getting raped? And I read a book about the girls who attended Yale University. And out of one of the classes, about a third of them were raped, right? So if you were beginning to publish it, so there was extreme push where universities are like, we really don't want to publish it, but it was a state mandate that you had to publish it. And now, Donald Trump during the first term, they were like, yeah, we don't, you ain't got to do that. So, but most schools kept a Title IX officer on campus. So that's a positive. I know in California, we all still have Title IX officers, and usually they're lawyers. Um, I'm not sure how effective they are, but that's neither here nor there. That's not the point. But they still do exist. But so this is kind of a fascinating conversation here. And this is something that a lot of schools are struggling with at this particular moment. Because what does this mean? Do you completely abolish some of these programs like Emoja? Do you get rid of the Multicultural Center? Do you get rid of the LGBTQ plus community center? What do you do with, yeah, and that those programs may be able to go away simply if they're not willing to certify financial aid for your school unless you get rid of them. There are some colleges that are going to have a deep conversation on what are we going to do. And there are some colleges that are having them right now. Some of them are just changing the title of their program so it won't necessarily be targeted. Some colleges are deciding we're, we will fight you in court. Um, so this is a deep conversation to see how students are responding. And then also it looks like, you know, um, this general provision is saying that they have the right to do this. Now the question is, do they have the right? Because under the Constitution, the executive does have the right to create agencies, but Congress has to certify it. So can Congress, I mean, as of right now, Congress has not made the decision to close the Department of Education. So even though the Department of Education is quote unquote closed, it's not closed. But what it is understaffed. And what they can do, now this is what they can do, is they can remove some of the functions of the Department of Education. So even though the Department of Education is still there, it's not there. And that's something that legally can be done. So if Congress is not willing to abolish it, um, which I actually don't think that they, who knows? I don't think that they will, but we shall see. If Congress is not willing to abolish it, what they can do is they just eliminate a lot of its functions and they move it around. So currently, as of right now, your financial aid is being handled by the Small Business Association. All I know is all I know as of right now is mm, I can't say that this is a good plan. But I can say is I'm going to pull up something because I want to see something. Um, yeah. Um, I don't know what to tell you. I think it's a peculiar situation that we're in. I'm not sure what this will mean. I also think that it's not going to last, but I'm not sure what that also means either. So I was trying to see, I wanted to show you something real quick. Well, what does this mean with your student loans? I don't know. Or even your Pell Grants? I don't know. I do know that, for example, like my husband, we've been paying, yeah, we've been paying his student loans back because mine has been forgiven, but we've been paying his student loans back. And um, um, and he was supposed to recertify with his income, and they keep moving the date back and back, back and back. And primarily it's because they just don't have the manpower. Like the staff has been reduced severely. Um, the manpower is just not there. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying that this is kind of where we're at. But anyway, that being said, I hope this helps. I know this was an extra long video, and I can do a whole class on this, to be honest, because this is kind of my field just as much as political science is, but this higher education stuff is more my field, and I get gleeful when I actually start really getting into the nuts and bolts of talking about this. But there are people have whole classes studying the Truman Report. I've read it twice. I was actually thinking about doing a paper on kind of doing what the Truman Report and now, I actually may do that by the end of the year to see what has happened with funding because this funding component is exactly the cornerstone of the thing that Truman Report, one of the few things of the Truman Report that has been implemented. Because a lot of it hasn't been implemented, but that is the caveat. And it really transformed higher education as a whole. It allowed more students to move around and not just stay at state schools or just stay in their own communities. It really allowed students to leave their home state and go to a whole nother place. So it really was transformative, and it's really, sad to see that things are changing. And it could be a positive. We shall see. So maybe I will write the paper probably by the end of the year. Just to so we can have a clearer understanding of how did this work? Okay. So anyway, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for being patient with me. I appreciate you.